This is going to be an interesting one for me to talk about today. Because, on the one hand, part one's point was actually kind of hilarious. Then parts 2 and 3 were, fine in both versions. And then part 4 was actually just kind of better in the sub. Mostly because music. And that is the extent of it. So, what's funny about this is that, with the exception of part 1, this continues the sub's trend of, well, I shouldn't say just this show sub, but like Japanese shows in general's big problem, which is they kind of give away the whole point of the episode. So, for example, part 2 in the sub is called Inherited Card Psycho Shocker's Counterattack. And part 3 is called Summon the Winged Dragon of Ra. Yeah, because that's the big moment. They basically give away the big moment in the thing. It's actually kind of why I appreciate it when an episode is just, Awakening of Evil parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? The only one that's fine is Jonouchi versus Trap Deck, So, I don't have much to talk about when it comes to the story elements of this thing. At least well, no, I'm saying this wrong. I actually do have quite a bit to say, both in terms of the the story, and of the duel itself. So I'm going to start with the duel itself, and then we'll transition into the story stuff and actually talk about it. So, first thing I want to comment on when it comes to the duel, specifically, is the duel actually starts at 6 minutes and 40 seconds on the Crunchyroll timestamp in both versions. I actually like that. As weird as that probably sounds, I like that. One of my big complaints in, for example, Face Off was we were halfway through part 1 and then finally the duel got going. I was so sick of that. In fact, it happened a couple of times. I'm pretty sure during Mime Control, that same thing happened, where it was like, oh, as soon as the that was after we had come back from commercial. That's when the action finally got started, and it drove me insane. And it will continue to drive me insane every time that frickin' happens, because we don't need to waste time like that. Now, credit where it's due, this 4-parter actually avoids that. I have been talking non-stop, and I mean non-fucking-stop, about how do I phrase this? About how irritated I have been when it comes to the pacing of Battle City, right? Everybody says Battle City is peak storytelling. Meanwhile, its pacing is so fucking sluggish and stupid to the point where I can literally trim out entire scenes and shave off about 9 episodes worth of content and off of this season while literally keeping all of the important plot beats. That is not an exaggeration. That is not hyperbole. And I'm not even just talking like the usual suspects. We don't fucking need Stepping Out, for example. We don't need Lights Camera Duel, for example. Okay? Ignore that. Ignore that and just keep and just keep the events the same, I could so easily shave off so many things. Like, the Exodia duel didn't need to be 2 episodes. Technically 3, because we didn't need an episode where Joey gets his ass kicked. In fact, you could have shaved off Stalked by the Rare Hunters, and the pacing would have been improved tremendously, in my opinion. Okay, so let's see. We didn't need Stepping Out. We didn't need Stalked by the Rare Hunters, which means then we could just shift it over into fighting Seeker. So we'll leave Seeker alone. Esperoba did not need to be... God. Hang on. Do I have the number of episodes that was? Or did I just call it... No, I just called it ESP Duelist. Okay. Give me a moment. Now I will tell you how many episodes, because I can easily pull that up. Because I've already uploaded those from my perspective. So if you'll give me a moment, I swear this won't take me long. Apologies for that. But yeah, here it was. Yeah, two episodes for ESP Duelist. Sorry about that. Right. Apparently, some of my videos are actually getting traction. Weirdly enough, so people are actually there's actual view counts on these things. And it's unbelievable. And I'm impressed. Anyways, sorry, I'm getting way off topic. So yeah, where was I? Right, sorry. ESP Duelist didn't need to be 2. You could have cut that down to 1. Master Magicians could have been 2 parts. Easily. Playing with a Parasite should have been 1. Mind Control has to stay the same number of episodes. Mind Control is the one exception to this, where I cannot chop that thing down any length, because it would actually screw up the pacing of that episode. So the five god combo needs to stay 3 parts. Legendary Fisherman, debatable. I'll say that. Double Trouble Duel didn't need to be 3 episodes. Or didn't need to be 4 episodes. You could have easily shaved that down a little bit. I would argue the rescue didn't need to exist at all, but shrug. Friends to the End and needs the 4 episodes, if we're talking the sub anyway. Shadow of a Duel is fine. I already talked about cutting out Lights Camera Duel, and then of course Let the Finals Begin. That needs to be there. Dark Spirit Revealed, you could easily chop one of those episodes off easily, in my opinion. And it would have worked better. You have to leave Rage of the Egyptian Gods alone, though. So that one needs to stay right where it is. Because that one is super important. There you go. There's my extensive list, right? Now, granted, I don't think that was exactly 9. Let's see. Stepping Out, Stalked by the Rare Hunters, Lights Camera Duel, 1 off of ESP Duelist, 1 off of Playing with a Parasite, 1 off of Double Duel, 1 off of Dark Spirit Revealed. Yeah, that's 7 right there. And then if you cut down on, whatchamacallit, if you shave off an episode of Legendary Fisherman, that's 8 episodes. So that's 8 episodes that you could theoretically chop out and be fine. And then the 9th would be the rescue, because it's just a clip show. Which was also not necessary, as I established, because in Japan, again, where it counts, there wasn't a break in between episodes 73 and 74. 74, of course, being the rescue. So, you know? Now, where am I going with all this? Why am I yapping about this crap? Yapping about the pacing and talking about the shaving off of 9 episodes thing. This, much like Mime Control, the Five God Combo, much like Five God Combo, you cannot, in my opinion, cut this down by even one episode to keep the pace going expertly. I argue you could fill the scenes with something better than what is done with it, but that's a side issue. That's an issue of content, not pacing, if that makes any kind of sense. Because then it's about what you put on the screen as opposed to who, instead of, what, the pace. I talked about last time, or was it last time or 2 videos ago? One of the two. A video or 2 ago, I talked about how the movie From Russia with Love was actually a great movie to me, and that the pacing was exquisite, even though it is literally a slow movie. That is a very slow movie, that if they picked up the pace on that thing would be at most like 70 to 80 minutes. And it's easily. However, they used the time that they allotted themselves very, very well, and that allowed them to craft a very epic and very thought-provoking thing, right? A very well-crafted story. One of the best bits, that movie is so good with the amount of tension that is on display in that movie, and I love it for that, right? So, there you go. And then, of course, The Godfather, the first Godfather movie, I mentioned as well, which that movie's almost 3 hours long, and it does not feel like 3 hours. Like I get up to the restaurant meeting with Sollozzo in that movie, which I believe is like an hour in or something like that, and I'm like, wait, it's been an hour into I'm an hour into this movie already? Holy shit. Right? Again, length does not matter. It's what you do with that length that's important, and that's where DM has been failing miserably, my opinion. And that's why I want to point out times like here and like with the Five God Combo when the pacing has been exquisite. Now, you might be tempted to cock an eyebrow at me, considering I literally just said that the Five God Combo was one of the examples of part 1. We were halfway through part 1 before the duel started. However, I actually don't mind that as much, because again, with Five God Combo, there was a flow to the events, right? We built up to, we started to build up the tension of the battle with Merrick. Then part 2 actually had a summon Osiris and have Tem facing down this monstrosity. And then, of course, Seto had to come in and give him a bit of a pep talk, like, come on, find its weakness. And then Atem gets up, he fights on, and he uses the infinite loop to defeat Osiris. All of this is good stuff. It's really good stuff, and I like that, It's actually one of the reasons why I like the pacing of it. And that's why I wanted to make a note of that, because this is 4 episodes. So it's 6 minutes into the episode, we're already dueling. That's good. That is actually good, my opinion. So, the wind starts blowing Joey's cards away. Hey, haha. Very funny. So we have some more stuff, and I actually forgot to look up the real world effect of Temple of the Kings, and to grab a copy of it, an image of it to put up on screen. So if you'll give me a quick moment, this will not take me long at all. Temple of the Kings. There we go. Come on. Load, you stupid thing. There we go. Alright, so Temple of the Kings means this sucker is definitely different than the anime version. The real world version, I believe this was actually a ban-worthy card because you're able to activate one trap card the turn it was set at, and it's a continuous spell instead of a field spell, which is doesn't mean anything really in the scheme of things, except for the fact that if it was a field spell, both players would be allowed to use it. So then you can also send one mystical beast circuit in your monster zone. And this card controls the graveyard to special summon any monster you want from your hand or deck, or a fusion monster from your extra deck. So yeah, yeah, Temple of the Kings was kind of busted. It was effectively, if you could cheese out Mystical Beast of Circuit, which is the boss monster of this thing, yeah. Yeah, you basically had Cyberstein, effectively a Cyberstein, or Metamorphosis, really, which was on steroids, of course. And you could, of course, only use each effect of the Temple of the Kings once per turn. So that's the real world version, which is kind of hilarious in hindsight. Right, now that which now that I've read that is kind of hilarious in hindsight. Right. Then there's Temple of the Kings as a field spell in the anime. Hey, which during your main phase you can remove one monster card from your hand, and end by paying half of your life points and tributing one monster. You can special summon the monster removed from play by this effect. That is, of course, is what Rashid does when he puts the counterfeit Raw into the Temple of the Kings, right? Which apparently has two. Because it appears with its real world effect in Vrains. That's why there's 2 pages. Okay. I was just curious about that. And then, of course, there's and then the manga version is just weird. Although it's a permanent spell in the real world as well. So yeah. That's actually kind of why it's as powerful as it is, right? Right. And which is funny because Mystical Beast of Circuit actually is kind of weaker in the anime because you need 3 cards to bring it out. Although it's also got a more powerful effect in the real world, so there's that. Also, I apologize for any trimming that I'm doing with my video here because, well, I want to remove the dead air. Duh. Anywho, let's continue, shall we? So then Joey assembles an army, specifically Gearfried the Iron Knight, Hanabusa Knight, which I didn't even write down as a note because why would I bother? seriously, why give Jonouchi weak ass monsters like that? He should be wielding stuff like, now I know he's got Axe Rider in his deck, but he should be using monsters like Armored Lizard. What else does he use? And what else is in this? I'm trying to think of like monsters he would have access to right now, right? Blackland Fire Dragon, we've seen that. Right. I'm trying to think of if there's any others that I would, that I would prefer him to have instead of stuff like Swordsman of Landstar and crap. Like Little Wingard is fine, Rocket Warrior is fine, Alligator Sword is fine. These are all decent. Now I know that would have put Joey in more danger, and he probably would have lost, but there's that, right? But at the same time, you could still work around it, in my opinion. But I digress. So he assembles his monsters, and then Joey tries to rid the field of all of Odeon, of Rashid's. I flip flop all the time, so I apologize. All of Rashid's spells and traps, wants to sweep them off the field. It takes a solid minute, and then a commercial break, and then another 30 seconds, and then an additional minute. So it takes like 2 minutes and a commercial break for us to find out why the hell Giant Trunade doesn't work. I kind of hate it, if I'm honest. So then Judgment of Anubis is played. Which I believe I did not. Well, silly me. Hey, god damn it. This is just a fail day. That's what this is. It is actually powerful in the real game, too. Because like in the anime, it activates when your opponent can respond to an opponent's spell card, or that would destroy spells and traps on the field. Which is funny because Giant Trunade would not actually be disrupted by this thing in the real game, because Giant Trunade returns cards to the hand. This would be against Heavy Storm, not Giant Trunade. You discard one card, you negate the activation, and then you destroy it, and then you destroy one face-up monster your opponent controls. Those inflicting damage equal to the destroyed monster's attack on the field. Which is different from its anime version, because in the anime, of course, it just negates any spell card, or destroys all monsters on the field, and half of all of the total attack, it gets deducted out of your opponent's life points. So good thing Rashid didn't have anything on his side of the field, huh? And then, fun fact, actually, there will actually be later uses of it that will actually be its real, actual, no really effect. Right. So it'll have its real effect in GX. X, not here. It's this the actual real life version will actually have a cameo later down the line. So there's that. So then Joey tries to teach Rashid about the actual heart of things. Calls out Alligator Sword. Calls out Rocket Warrior. Fun fact: this is actually the first. I'm pretty sure this is either the. Wait, no. Is this the first time? No, right, because Heartless, because the Anchor duel was the first time. I was focused on how good that episode was in the sub, so forgive me for forgetting things. Pretty sure that was the first time Rocket Warrior showed up. Although I could be wrong about that. Regardless, Fairy Box is then used again, which was used in the Mako duel, so that was cool. And that blocks the redirected attack, like after Rashid springs that Eye of Wajat trap on him. Then then Rashid hits him with trap monsters, specifically 3 copies of Embodiment of Apopus. This is where we get to talk about trap monsters now. I like trap monsters. I really do. There are some very, very, very cool ones that I use, including one that I actually used in Duel Links a lot. Oh shoot, what was the name of that thing? That sounds right. Are you what I want? Yes, you are. Sorry. Sorry. The wiki was trying to tell me, hey, quit using ad blocker. And I'm like, denied. Anyways. So, this one is known as Statue of Anguish Pattern. And so, as ever, summons itself as an effect monster. Summons itself as a monster with an this one's actually got an effect. It's a Earth Rock level 7, 0 attack, 2500 defense. Yeah, it's a stall guy. Still treated as a trap card. If summoned this way, he cannot be targeted by other card effects while you control another trap card, or that is a monster. So if you have another trap monster, this guy can't be targeted. And then if a card is special summoned from your spell or trap zone to the monster zone, while this card is a monster, you can target one card on the field and destroy it. So this is really kind of this guy is definitely beneficial if you actually use other trap monsters, which is kind of funny. Now, granted, I usually use them as just a big wall, admittedly, because 2500 is, not the easiest thing to get over in Duel Links, but I digress, But yeah, it was but yeah, trap monsters are pretty cool. There's a lot of very interesting ones, including ones that that actually are either ones that me and my friends have used, or will actually appear later on. One of my own person, I've seen and even had ones like, for example, Tiki Curse, which is a level 4 or rock with 1800 attack. Heck, which when it battles an effect monster, if another trap card, another trap monster, and so while he's he's being treated as a monster, if another trap monster battles an opponent's monster, after damage calculation, whatever card that trap monster battled gets destroyed, right? And then I know there's others that actually love, for example, Zoma the Spirit, for example, because he's actually kind of a powerful guy as well, which is funny because he actually has another version as well, the Earthbound Spirit, which And fun fact, I've been learning about some of these while I'm sitting here looking them up, so that's kind of funny. Anyways, enough of that. Sorry, enough of that. My point is that trap monsters are actually kind of cool, and I've always thought so. Really cool, and can be used for both tribute fodder and for attack fodder. Like I said, I used one in Duel Links for tribute fodder. Definitely helpful when you're going after some of those unlock conditions in Duel Links. So that ends part 1. Joey staring down 3 embodiment of Apophis. I have a note about that says math fail. It's because everybody's because in the dub they think that Joey's going to lose if all 3 hit. Except he's got Alligator Sword, Rocket Warrior, and so he's got Alligator Sword and Rocket Warrior, and he's got 1,900 life points left. Now, to be fair, he saves himself a little bit of life points by switching Alligator Sword into defense, but still, it's like, come on now. So then Joey tries to play Scapegoat, but Magic Jammer hits. Oh, I know the pain of that, Joey. Magic Jammer's a bitch. Fun fact, Jaden's going to get hit by a beefed up version of this card later. But that's way down the line. We've got to get through 3 whole seasons of this show before we can get to that. We'll talk about all of that later. So then we get the anime version of Foolish Burial and Grave Robber showing up. Personally, I like to think, to canon the chain, Grave Robber first, chain that with Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial resolves first, puts Jinzo into Rashid's graveyard. Grave Robber takes it, summons it, all of his traps are gone. It is still a damn cool move, and I really like that. So then Rashid draws and freaks out because of the counterfeit Raw. Places it in the Ark, calls out Mystical Beast to Circuit after delaying Joey with swords. And then, of course, and this is as Joey is summoning all of the monsters that he's gained over Battle City, with Kaiba being less of a dick about it than Seto. Really? Like, I'm pretty sure that's a note I had in part 2. Yeah, right there. Seto is more douchey than Kaiba. I also don't like that the whole shock of Joey got out a high level monster. Why is that the shock and not, oh fuck, Jinzo, aka the actual freaking counter to my entire strategy? Sadly, Yami Merrick's actually going to pull that same shit too later down the road. What? Ugh. Anyways. Spoilers, I guess. Anyways. Backstory stuff we'll be talking about later, which is all there. Which is funny because there's 2 uses. Which is actually funny because there's actually 2 uses of good uses of music. Admittedly, like, part of me is like still, well, I guess it's not too late to kind of shift my opinion and give a point to the. You know what? No, I'm not going to do it. Because it's just that musical sting, and it's like, no. There's enough in the sub for part 4 that I think it warrants it, but yeah. But otherwise, I do like that the raw music that acts as the cliffhanger to part 2, or no, not part 2, part 3. Sorry, which is actually really cool. Cool. So then we get into part 4, where Odeon is told to summons out Sack's Mystical Beast to Circuit, which has absorbed all of Joey's Battle City win cards, all the cards that the anti-rule has given him. And then he calls on Raw, sacks half of his life points, as we went over with Temple of the Kings. But the real Ring Dragon of Ra is pretty pissed that Odeon played a counterfeit. Just as it's been every single time. Which is funny because Merrick has this big faith. Yes, Odeon will be powerful enough to withstand it. Will be powerful enough to summon it. Yay! Oh, wait. What am I basing that on again? Am I basing that off of the fact that my sister wants to bang Odeon or something? Because that's the only explanation I can come up with. My sister basically is sat naked in front of you and you haven't banged her, so that must mean you have enough strength or something. I don't know. I know I keep going to that well, but it's like, what the fuck else? What the fuck else is there? There is no single thing. He says that Odeon's got strength of heart, but he's freaking out at the sight of the goddamn counterfeit. Yeah, real strong heart there, here, Merrick. Ugh, whatever. So then Raw knocks them both out. The ruse is over. Odeon and Joey get Rashid and Joey Jonouchi both get knocked out. And then both Seto and Kaiba are both somewhat reasonable. Although Seto is more egotistical about it than Kaiba. Gives them 5 minutes to get up. Joey has his dream where everybody's got his back. He wakes up. Luck of the draw, because, Rashid tried to get up, but he failed to get up, which is kind of funny. And that's it. Alright. So, yeah, and that's the duel. Alright. So, pretty good duel. I'm not going to lie. This is actually one of the more interesting duels. It is undercut by some of the story beats, but what's funny is that the story beats don't actually undercut it that much, which is actually kind of funny. So, let's go ahead and talk about the story now. And I'm going to be consulting mostly my sub notes on this one, because it was one of those like, one page was, basically nearly 2 pages of notes for the dub, because most of those are universal, and then an additional page of notes for the sub. So, yeah, like I said, in less than a minute, because of the lack of superfluous dialogue, part 1 got the point. I do prefer the ref being calmer. Oh, then Joey's ego. I didn't mention this earlier, but Joey's ego is kind of funny in this episode, even though it's incredibly stupid. He declares, "I will win by the 9th turn," in the dub, and in the sub, he declares the 11th turn. In the sub, they literally are like, where the hell did he pull that number from? It's like, he's trying to sound cool. And that is what he's doing. He's trying to be intimidating. He's failing miserably because he's Joey. Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. He's anime Joey, therefore he's failing miserably. Manga Joey has a better track record of being intimidating. I mean, just look at the death glare he was giving Pegasus in the manga, and what he did to Bandit Keith. I hope I hope Future Alex remembers to put up images of those. So yeah. Then I have a question for Yugi. Although it's a Tem mostly asking this, so maybe he's not aware. But like, are replicas not a thing in the Yu-Gi-Oh world? I have to question that, Then they talk about how, because Rashid pulls out the fake Millennium Rod, and then he puts it away. And they see that as him declaring that he will fight fair. Why is that not a giant red flag? No, seriously, why is that not a giant red flag? That should have been enough for them to all go, what the fuck? And call him out on it. But no, they all just ignore it. Okay. I mean, I know why Seto doesn't call it out. It's because he wants to see Raw. So, who the fuck cares, right? Ugh. So then Merrick's inner monologue in the sub is that he wants to solve the mystery of why Seto is holding the Millennium Rod in the ancient tablet. Now, he says at a later point that he needs to brainwash Seto for that. Why? No, seriously, why? Wait, huh? Merrick's motivations make no fucking sense. Well, okay. Let me rephrase that. Every single motivation that Merrick has outside of kicking Atem's ass and claiming the title of Pharaoh makes no fucking sense, in my opinion. Period. Why does he want to solve the mystery? History. Like, why does he care? Oh, Seto was holding the Millennium Rod in the ancient past. You're holding on to it now. What the fuck's the also, as he points out in part 4 in the sub, he doesn't give a shit about the occult. Hello? He's not coming after your rod. This isn't a yaoi fanfic. Wake up, pull your head out of your ass, and stop being fucking stupid and padding out the runtime. I know I said that this was the better pay. I did say this was one of the better paced multi-parters, didn't I? I stand behind that, but it's just like, oh my god, what? Why does everybody sing this asshole's praises when he guzzles paint thinner on a regular basis? You don't need to fear Kaiba coming after the Millennium Rod. You never had to fear that. He doesn't care. He's never cared. You know? Anyways. So then they wonder if Rashid's really got Raw. A bit. They flip-flop on whether or not they believe that Rashid is Merrick. That's why shit like that happens. So, Temple of the Kings is actually not very well explained in either version, in my opinion. But, there you go. I like that Shizuka gets mad, simultaneously gets mad at Jonouchi, and then goes and cheers him on, like, just instantly. There's just something appealing about that. I already talked about the animation delay. Hey, so okay. They talk about. There's two things I want to talk about. There's two last things I want to talk about in regards to the game, and it's character related. That's why I saved it for this section. I have never bought into the idea that in this game, not walking into traps is the smart play. Now, carelessly walking into traps, yes. But there's ways to play around trap cards, and that's usually what changes the very dynamic of the game. Mirror Force, for example, would have if players put their monsters into defense and only attack with the monster they're willing to sack if they suspect an opponent has Mirror Force, right? Which is funny because that's actually not, since Jonouchi's not attacking, putting monsters like Jinzo into defense was pointless. You know. Now, granted, he couldn't attack, and that's kind of why. So shrug. But yeah, in any other circumstance, it would make no sense. And then, of course, Jonouchi has to call Rashid a coward. Because, of course, they do. And then Joey has to get dissed some more. Which just gets on my nerves. Then part 3 actually starts with an interesting point from Rashid. Because Rashid asks Jonouchi, why did you enter Battle City? Which ironically, despite my flip-flopping between him being encouraging and basically thinking he needs to give up, it kind of reinvigorates Jonouchi, and then he's like, alright, yeah, I'm back in this, you know? And then we get into Rashid's backstory, which I actually need to flip back to my dub notes, because that's where most of my notes about this are. Part 3 is mostly about the backstory, ironically enough. There's an entire 7-minute section devoted to Odeon's memories. I do like both angles, the courage and family angles, when it comes to having Rashid reflect back on this, you know? So, Odeon remembers getting unofficially adopted by the Ishtars, and this is where we find out that Merrick's dad is a dick. Because he was reluctantly going to allow Rashid to be the, be the one to get the engravings on his back, so, to carry the secrets of the Pharaoh on his back, and yada, 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 right? And, of course, it's got to be a man, because women aren't allowed to have power in this franchise, apparently. Or agency. Or dual victories. We'll get there next week. And the week after, ironically. But yeah, so Odeon tries to get to be selected for the initiation because, Merrick doesn't want to go through with it. He's scared of it, yada, 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 right? Then Merrick's dad had Ishtar Sr., we'll just call him Ishtar Sr., is abusive. He's an asshole, and even violently strikes Odeon, which is just Jesus. Even beats the shit out of him after Merrick got bit by a freaking cobra, which is just like, how the hell was Rashid supposed to know that there was a goddamn cobra in this caves? You're underground. What the hell is that cobra doing there? Anyways. So then Odeon basically has a lapse in his caring. Because after Merrick gets poisoned and all this other shit, he's basically has his life threatened by Merrick's dad, by Ishtar Sr., and this kind of pisses him off to the point where he literally brandishes a knife. There's a lot of censorship in this episode, in this 4-parter, when it comes to this backstory stuff in the dub. So, yeah, you might think that would be enough to warrant the point for the sub, but I think the backstory still works even in the dub with all the censorship. It's just there's a lot of censorship in this thing, and rightly so, because I mean, who wants to see child abuse? Right? So he gives up after Merrick calls him his brother. Merrick is forced to undergo the Tomb Keeper's initiation, and then Odeon, of course, gives himself the Well, I guess it's on... Yeah, it's on this side. Does, carves out those hieroglyphs on his face. Is to prove his loyalty. And then, of course, Joey and Jonouchi sniff out that he's not really Eric. And then he fails to get up after the fake rod zaps him. Joey gets up, wins the duel through sheer luck. And then Yami Merrick, who was being held back by Odeon, shows up. Yeah, I'm done with that. And then Yami Merrick shows up, and it's like, "Mwahaha! I am the real Merrick. I am not as kind, or I'm the other Merrick. I'm not as kind. That kind of shit." And his voice, in his dub voice, is not there yet, which kind of sucks because I actually like the filter they put on the voice actor for Merrick in the dub. But it's not here yet. I'm pretty sure we're going to have to wait until into the next three-parter to start hearing it. So, to reiterate, part 1 gave the sub a point. Parts 1 and 4 gave the sub a point, and then 2 and 3 are just neither. So, there you go. 2 more points for the sub this week. Good 4-parter, though. Really good 4-parter. I enjoyed this one. So, real talk right at the end here. I'm going to be shocked. Shocked, I tell you. If next week is not a rant view. I will stand here in shock and awe, and I will literally be like, I'll throw up my hands and I'll be like, well, it's not a rant view. Because next week is the mind game. Mai versus Merrick. Oh, fuck. I'm not looking forward to this. I really am not. I suppose I should just bite the bullet and try and get it done today, but we'll see. Because, I can think of like half a dozen other things I'd rather do, but the whole point of entering a YouTube Dark is to get this done, so shrug, I guess. But regardless, I'm going to chop off on this particular video, and yeah, that's it. The Awakening of Evil. Good 4-parter, like I said. Until next time, this is Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers signing out. Have a good one. Duel stand by.